Hey guys, I bet you weren't expecting a follow-up video so soon, but um, I had a question asked to me that I felt like I needed to address. Um, I know I said in my last video that I'll be making one on the elemental spirits that Paul talks about in the Bible, and that one will be coming up. But just want to make one right quick. I was asked, should a Christian have anything to do with Ouija boards, tarot cards, fortune telling, seances, anything like that? No. Well, good talking to y'all. God bless you. Have a good. Nah, I wouldn't do that to you. Um, you have to understand when I did my video about can a Christian watch a scary movie, you know, I did put some caveats in there. Um, there's certain movies that you shouldn't watch, and you should never watch anything that you don't feel comfortable watching. Okay. Um, but there's one type of movie, um, especially involving if it's got anything to do with the demons or witchcraft or uh, practicing any kind of black magic or anything like that. If in that movie they start actually speaking some kind of summoning spell or ritualistic, whatever, you should turn it off immediately. And that's because these Hollywood writers, they do a really good job of putting real spells and rituals into the dialogues of their movies. And it's not just a bunch of, for the most part, it's not just a bunch of mumbo jumbo that some writer made up in his head that doesn't mean anything. Having watched quite a few of these movies, I can tell you that these guys do their research. And a lot of times, these are real summoning spells, curses, what have you, word for word taken out of, ancient texts. And if you're sitting there in your living room or your bedroom, wherever you're watching TV, and this thing starts playing across your TV, it doesn't really matter if you're saying the words or not. The words are being spoken aloud right there in your bedroom, or your living room, wherever you have your TV at. Most people have TVs in every room nowadays, but yeah, that's not something you want. And it's for that same reason that a Christian should never have anything to do with any of those things that I just mentioned. Because when you fool with stuff like that, you're inviting things in. Plenty of people played with Ouija boards, and thought it was all a big gag and all that stuff. But the purpose of a Ouija board is to try to contact spirits. And sometimes you do contact spirits, but it's not the spirit you think it is. You're not you're not talking to the spirit of old Granny Hazel. You know, you're talking to some kind of dark power, a demon, a fallen angel, what have you. Um, and you are implicitly giving them, having a hard time talking tonight, unlike any other night. Um, you're giving them permission. They need legal permission. Um, think of it this way. Let's say that you're all ready to do some spiritual warfare, and you've prayed and you've fasted and you've put on the full armor of God, and you're ready to go fight. And you come up to these big giant doors, this big building, kind of think maybe Roman Colosseum like building or something like that. And you're just itching to go, boy. I mean, you know, you're wanting to get into some spiritual warfare. And you kick in the door. But instead of this battleground with everybody out there fighting with swords and whatever kinds of weapons they've got, you find yourself standing inside a courtroom. That's the more realistic version of what you would find. You would see God as the judge. You would see Satan as the prosecuting attorney, and Jesus as your defense attorney. Um, things in the spiritual world operate. It's people think it's probably chaotic, and to a certain extent, maybe it is. But it's also ruled and governed by laws, just like our societies are ruled and governed by laws. And the same way that you can't invite somebody into your house and then maybe a couple hours later get tired of them and tell them to leave and they refuse to leave, and then you try to get them for trespassing. Well, hey, you invited them in the first place. Any kind of demonic entity or what have you has to operate under certain guidelines, under certain rules. And you might say, well, why would God allow that to happen at all? Well, God is love, but God is also just. And being just means that you can't have justice if you don't have a set of laws and guidelines to go by. And so there are. Now, could God stop anything anytime he wanted to? Yeah, because he's God, he could. But he allows this to happen, much because of free will. We come back to the free will again. And these entities will deceive you into granting them what they consider legal permission into your life. And you may not realize you're doing it. If you drink to excess quite regularly, you can be allowing spirits into your life that you don't want there. If you're a habitual liar, you'll be allowing legal access to spirits into your life that you don't want there. Now, I'm not the type of guy that'll say never take a drink. I know there's a lot of Christians feel that way, that, just letting one drop of alcohol pass your lips is a sin. I don't believe that. I believe the sin lies in the drunkenness. Once you become too intoxicated to where you can't make sober decisions anymore. I used to work with a boy, love him to death, that was a devout Christian way before I came back. And we used to talk about stuff, because I was off the beaten path, but I still believed. And he told me one time, he said, Scott, he said, we got on the subject of drinking a beer, And I told him, I said, I don't see anything wrong with drinking a beer. If you're out at the steakhouse or out at the pizzeria or whatever, and you want to have a beer with your meal, I do not see that as a sin. Now, some might disagree with me because they're saying, well, if you let it in a little at a time, it can get worse. And that is true. That is true. You have to have self-control. And I also wouldn't recommend it for anybody that has suffered from alcoholism in the past. Because, you're putting yourself in for a fall, if that were the case. But if you're someone that has never suffered from alcoholism, never been anywhere near an alcoholic, but you enjoy the flavor of beer, you enjoy the taste of beer. I enjoy the taste of beer. Every once in a while, when I'm out working, I'll drink a beer, maybe even two. Ooh, but I'm out working and I'm sweating it out as quick as it's hit me. So I even catching what we would call back in the day a good buzz is I would consider going too far. Now, if you just drink enough to just loosen up a little bit, you're still sober in your mind. You can still make sober decisions, still make sober judgments. I don't believe that's a sin. If you do, let me know in the comments. Call me out on it. But anyway, getting back to the story, he said he was really involved in this church. And he said, Scott, I kind of feel the same way you do. That the sin is not in taking a sip of alcohol or even drinking a bottle of beer. But because I'm active in my church, even though when we go out to the steakhouse, I may want a beer with my dinner, I don't order one because I feel like I need, to set an example. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. If that's what the Holy Spirit is telling you, then go by that, But anyway, I kind of got sidetracked there. The legal authority. The legal authority is they have to have some kind of legal authority. And these spirits have been around a lot longer than us. They're more intelligent than we are. They're really crafty. They've had a long time to perfect their craft. And their mission, like I said earlier in one of the other videos, their mission is to draw as many people away from Jesus and God as they possibly can, because they want to hurt God. and they know it hurts God when he loses one of his children. Going back to the movies, speaking of the movies, there's one movie, if you're kind of on the fence about watching something that portrays an actual demon, and you're kind of scared or, nervous about maybe watching it, there's one movie I would recommend you watch. It's called Nefarious. And it was actually written and directed by the same guys that did the movie God's Not Dead. It was based on a novel by a Christian author named Steve Deace. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Deace. And it's not a scary movie. It's almost more like a legal drama with some suspense in it. But the movie does a really good job of explaining how demons operate, how they begin to influence you little by little, and how each foothold they get in there gives them more legal claim to your space, to you. In fact, I just watched it again earlier. It's a really good movie. It's not got jump scares. It's not for kids. Don't get me wrong. It's not for kids. I wouldn't let my kids watch it. Young kids. But it's one of the very few movies out there that tackles this subject about demons and demonic possession. And it's not in the typical Hollywood fashion, with the spinning heads and the puking out green pea soup or whatever stuff, levitating off the bed, all that stuff. It has none of that stuff in it. And it's probably a movie you'll want to watch. If you do watch it, you'll probably want to watch it twice, or maybe even more, to catch all the little nuances in the conversation. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but basically most of the movie takes place inside of a prison where a guy's getting ready to get executed. Now, he claims he's possessed by a demon. And before they can execute him, they have to have a psychologist or psychiatrist or some kind of shrink, come in and do a mental evaluation, because if they find him insane, then they can't execute him. But if they find him sane, they can go through with the execution. And most of the movie is just a back and forth between this demon-possessed man and this psychologist, who happens to be an atheist and doesn't believe in any mumbo-jumbo Christianity, nothing like that, And it's a really, really, really good movie to make you think, because it portrays things, in my opinion, as close to any movie that I've ever seen, the way things really work in the interactions between the spiritual realm and our realm. So I want to make this quick, because once again it's hotter and dang it over here, and I just felt like I wanted to make this video just to answer that question. Any Christian should absolutely have nothing to do. You should shun any kind of occult practices at all, because no good can come of it, but there is a lot of bad that can come from it. But yeah, watch the movie if you feel like it. I think it's on Amazon Prime and maybe a couple places for free right now. You can get on there and watch it. But yeah, watch that movie and you'll kind of get to see where I'm trying to go in these videos of how things actually operate as opposed to the big budget horror films that that we're mostly exposed to. And yeah, it's a really good movie to watch. But anyway, this time I am signing off. Y'all have a good night. God bless each and every one of you. I will be coming out with a video on the elemental spirits sometime in the next few days. So watch for that. If you like this, give it a thumbs up. Another bug on my table. If you want to subscribe. Like I said, it helps me feel like I'm not talking into the void here. But yeah, have a good evening. And we'll talk at you later.